Welcome in, everyone, to the It's Official podcast. Representing First Bet and Express Bet, I'm Jeremy Plonk, flying the ship solo again this week. Hope to have our good friend Jeff Siegel back shortly. We've got a lot to talk about this week. Probably the most consequential weekend of the Kentucky Derby Trail so far has just occurred. So we're going to have all the fallout from that. We've got Horse of the Year back in action this week. So a lot to get to. Let's get right to the topics here on It's Official this week. Let's go to our first topic. And it's the Goosebump Award. Which horse got us up out of our seat last week and got us excited for horse racing the most? Well, in the Santa Anita Handicap, it may not have been an A-list field this year, but there was an A-list performer who turned in his A-plus game. How about Locked in the Big Cap?
For home, Locked is let loose, and he moves to the front with a furlong left to go, and it's lights out. He's pouring it on. Express Train, a belated rally from Hit Show, but it's all about Locked, and Jose Ortiz dominating the Big Cap, cruising home to an effortless 8-length romp.
Victory margin there, 8.5 lengths, the largest in the history of the Santa Anita Handicap. For the Todd Pletcher trainee, Locked, coming off that second place finish in the Pegasus World Cup, where he was beaten 6 lengths by White Barrio. How good was White Barrio that day in retrospect, as we saw what Locked did in the Santa Anita Handicap? Nice to see Express Train back on some of his best game. Of course, the veteran won that race, the Santa Anita Handicap, back in 2022. He's still going well. As for Hit Show, third place finisher, really didn't bring much, and he just seems to be a cut below the top grade one horses in the U.S., but they took their shot on the West Coast. I took the shot playing him and tried to bet against Lock on the 1.25 miles. That did not work out too well. Lesson learned. Lock, much the best in the Santa Anita Handicap, and he gets the Goosebump Award for this week. Now, Todd Pletcher had another top contender for the Goosebump Award last week. This was really which one did you want to pick from of the Pletcher trainees, because the handicap division also got a nice boost with the return of Mindframe, the Gulfstream Park Handicap. That was part of the Fountain of Youth Day Stakes at Gulfstream last week. And, Mindframe was a horse who just barely got beat when he was wandering all over the track in the Belmont Stakes last year. Came back, captured the Haskell. We hadn't seen him since the summertime. Mindframe back, and he announced he's going to be a contender for some of these big races throughout the rest of the year.
Move on Mindframe. He did, and he just took the lead. It's Mindframe who now has a clear lead. He's a length and a half in front. The response was instant. Encino is running home from the inside again from last. Steel Sunshine underway. He angles 4 wide. 3/4, 10 and 2. They're straightened for the drive. It's the 4-year-old debut for the Maryland-bred Mindframe. He's an 1/8 of a mile out with work to do. Steel Sunshine is closing ground late. They come past the 16th hole. Mindframe looking around for competition. He'll find Steel Sunshine second, and that's where he'll stay. Mindframe comes back a winner.
And lest we forget about Fierceness, one of the top 3-year-olds in America last year and the Travers winner. He hasn't gotten back on the workout tab yet for 2025, but expected to run this year and give more depth to the handicap division and the Todd Pletcher stable specifically. Fierceness, Mindframe, and last week's Goosebump Award winner Locked makes for a Pletcher powerhouse in the handicap division this year. One bit of note from the Santa Anita notes after the Big Cap, Pletcher said maybe California Crown back in the fall at Santa Anita for Locked, a return trip west, maybe to prep towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, this year, the Breeders' Cup held at Del Mar, so it wouldn't be bad to get out to California a little early. California Crown may get Locked back. The Big Cap winner, what a performance he had last week. Let's go to our Triple Crown tracker now. And a couple of these races could have made that Goosebump Award too, if not for the Pletcher posse. But let's start things off in the Triple Crown tracker. We'll go from the east, starting in Florida with the Fountain of Youth Stakes last weekend. There was some question going into it about sovereignty from my personal standpoint. I didn't like the work tab. The workouts I saw on the video did not impress, but not as much to say that a bad workhorse might not turn out to run well in the afternoon. The gaps in his workout tab were just too much for me to overcome in there. When you look at what we were trying to deal with sovereignty in that race, I mean, this is a horse who had only had 3-4 workouts back. They weren't on pattern. The workouts were December 24th at Payson. Then again, not till January 15th at Payson. Then January 31st. We're talking 2 weeks in between drills here. Then back on January 7th or February 7th. And then one work really back on pattern nicely in February 15th. So 3 works really coming in on pattern for Sovereignty. He looked to be definitely a short horse going in to this race in the Fountain of Youth Stakes. Bill Mott, the trainer, didn't make any kind of brassy predictions on the performance on the comeback. I thought they would give him a race. And if this was giving Sovereignty a race, he's going to be a major 3-year-old to be reckoned with. He looked lost early in the race, and midway down the backstretch, I thought Sovereignty is a short horse. Maybe he'll pass a couple in here, and we'll try to catch him next time or the time after, because he really impressed last year as a 2-year-old in winning the Street Sense at Churchill Downs. But let's pick the race up midway in the Fountain of Youth. He hasn't figured it out yet, Sovereignty, but he's going to.
Burnham Square guided to the clear by Zayas. He's on a mid-race move with Keep It Easy between horses, and Sovereignty has to keep up at the back of the field. The half mile was 47 seconds flat. They go to the first finish line and swing to the fore turn. Neo Equos at a big price has the lead to half a length. River Thames is second. These two have gone 6 ahead of Burnham Square, who just went by Gate to Wire to take third. Keep It Easy is between horses, and Sovereignty tries to motivate himself. He's underway now in the blue colors. He's within 8 lengths of the lead through 3 quarters in 1:10 3. Neo Equos stretching out River Thames. Sovereignty warming to the task for Alvarado. He's on the far outside into third. Gate to Wire finds his best ride. Burnham Square's bid is stalled as River Thames has made a clear lead. Off the turn in the stretch drive in the Fountain of Youth, and River Thames, he has the lead by 2 with a 16th to go. Sovereignty begins to get on track, but time is ticking away. River Thames almost there. Sovereignty gonna dive at him late. Here comes Sovereignty! He got him too, did Sovereignty. He went from last to first to win under Junior Alvarado for Godolphin and Bill Mott. The Fountain of Youth from last to first to Sovereignty.
Just a lot to like about this horse and performance. Sovereignty's only going to get better in the Godolphin Blue. Bill Mott, a master horseman. Of course, he won a Kentucky Derby with Country House by disqualification. Maybe he can get one straight up to the wire with Sovereignty finishing if he gets to the first Saturday in May. That much we know. Son of Into Mischief, who's already sired a Derby winner out of a Bernardini mare. Of course, Preakness winner there as the dam sire. So a lot to like there from the Into Mischief colt Sovereignty, winner of the Fountain of Youth Stakes. Now, as for some of the fallout in the Fountain of Youth, disappointing effort from Burnham Square for sure. The son of Liam's Mappin looked so good in winning the Holy Bull Stakes from off the pace, 2-time winner at the meet. He just didn't have the same kind of oomph in this race. Now, I thought after the Holy Bull that this was a horse that a conservative trainer like Ian Wilkes would wait for the Florida Derby with. I was surprised because he already had 2 routes at the meet. That Burnham Square came back and almost was forced into this race. It didn't quite feel right. I thought he'd still win the race as the best horse, but I didn't know if that was best for his long-term prospects. He took a step backwards in this 4th place finish. The one good thing about Burnham Square, when it looked like he was completely checking out of things, he kind of got back into it a little bit and made a little bit of a run back. He only got beat 3 lengths for all the money. So if we want to laud the top horse in here, Sovereignty, Burnham Square got beat 3. We already know his quality in winning the Holy Bull. He's a run-all-day pedigree. I think Burnham Square is still a horse you want to consider towards the Kentucky Derby. But I don't know. Does he take another step back in the Florida Derby next time? Because I thought he would have benefited from the time between starts than Florida Derby into Kentucky Derby since he already had 2 routes at the meet. A little bit juggling now on my thoughts about Burnham Square just because of the pattern. The calendar doesn't forgive. That's what I always say. You can't beat the calendar in horse racing, especially when you talk about the Kentucky Derby. First Saturday in May is going to come up when it comes up. Florida Derby is going to come up when it comes up 4 weeks after the Fountain of Youth Stakes. So he's going to have to get another start in. Maybe they give him a little bit more time. Don't come back with Burnham Square for the Fountain of Youth. Get another week and maybe go the next week at Keeneland in the Bluegrass Stakes, but then you got a shorter time frame, 4 weeks to the Derby versus 5 if you come back at Gulfstream. So Burnham Square, it's a little bit of a guessing game now what to do with him moving forward. As for the runner-up in the Fountain of Youth Stakes, good effort, better than I expected actually by River Thames. I'm not sure he's a 2-turn complete route horse here. I think he's going to be better around 1 turn, but he ran pretty well here at the mile on a 16th, getting just beat a neck. Looked like he had him kind of opened up in the stretch and was going to go ahead and go on with it. Maybe he threw his head up in the air a little bit and just kind of gave up and thought he had the job done. Maybe the distance got to him. You can kind of look at the video and see. I don't think he's completely shortening stride and done. I think he did pull himself up just a little bit in there. But again, this was a mile and a 16th with the 16th pole finish line. That should have benefited River Thames, not Sovereignty. And as we go longer to a full stretch run and a mile and an eighth, if River Thames goes back for the Florida Derby, or if he heads out of town, he's going to find a mile and an eighth no matter where he goes last. I still don't. I'm not sold on River Thames as a 9 furlong horse, much less a Kentucky Derby horse at 10 furlongs. So, in terms of the Triple Crown Tracker and the Fountain of Youth Stakes, certainly a big thumbs up to Sovereignty. A little bit uncertain about the rest, though. River Thames, and what do we have with Burnham Square? Is he going to continue an ascent and bounce back, or is he on a downward trajectory? We'll watch the workout tab with him over the next couple weeks and see how he bounces back. That's the Fountain of Youth Stakes, first up on our Triple Crown Tracker. Let's go to Flood Zone in the Gotham Stakes next up. Flood Zone is a horse who I didn't give a lot of respect to coming into the Gotham, quite honestly. 1/3 mile there. He was coming out of a Florida-bred allowance race down at Gulfstream Park, and Victor Barbosa had him at Gulfstream. Now he switched to Brad Cox's barn after a private purchase. How much was he going to move forward first time for Cox? I wasn't quite certain that he would fit in stakes company right away off of that allowance win against Florida breds, but he absolutely did, and it was a good performance by Flood Zone after his Florida bred maiden win in his second start. I believe I said allowance, but that was a maiden score. $45,000 Son of Frost, and he's achieved already for the connections, because I'm sure they got a handsome price selling him to people with Derby aspirations with Watford Racing. So Flood Zone, let's go back and take a look at his victory in the Gotham Stakes. We'll talk more about the big one in New York.
Trying to run on 2, they reach the top of the stretch, and Sand Devils trying to keep the undefeated streak going. Flood Zone is challenging towards the outside, but the gutsy New York bred is battling on, but Flood Zone is now edging clear. Here's Flood Zone out in the center of the racetrack. Garamond is trying to make up some ground. Also Mai Matoli. Sand Devils battling on, but Flood Zone is now weaving through the stretch, but Flood Zone is best. Flood Zone is going to win the Gotham.
So on the clock, not a fast and impressive time, 1:39 3. They came home almost 26 seconds the last quarter mile. It's a bog, though, in New York. You can't look at the raw times, obviously. And this race actually did go faster than some other stakes on the card, including the Stymie for older handicap horses. The Stymie wasn't a very good field this year, I didn't think. So running faster than them is still an accomplishment, but not necessarily if it was a top-class field of horses in the older handicap ranks. But certainly you have to give Flood Zone some credit. Ran as faster than anybody on the card that day at Aqueduct. Showed good speed, was able to kind of settle a bit and then finish up, but again, didn't finish with the fastest of fractions. This is a colt by Frosted out of a Curlin mare, might get the 2 turns. We're going to have to see on the stretch out. Probably you look at Brad Cox now, the trainer brings this one back in the Wood Memorial. Competition won't be as strong in the Wood as it would be, say, in the Bluegrass or Arkansas Derby as for the final preps. And you already have a win over the track in the Gotham. So I would expect Flood Zone to come back in the Gotham or in the Wood Memorial for his final start. He was able to run down and run past Sandman, a horse, or Sand Devil, I should say, a horse who's a New York bred who started to show a little bit of wear on the tires late in his most recent start against the state breds. He wasn't able to fend this one off. They were clear of the rest, but nobody else in this race really had much in terms of credentials in here. So a weak edition of the Gotham by any stretch. I was trying to find a shipper coming in from Louisiana and calling card. He didn't run much at all in there for Mike Maker. So I don't think it was a very good field. Flood Zone's got a lot to prove still, but he's got 50 qualifying points towards the Kentucky Derby now, and he's in the field if they want to be. And as a private purchase coming off that Florida bred win, you could be sure that they want to go to the Kentucky Derby. That's why you buy a horse privately this time of year. They got their immediate return on investment. Flood Zone, winner of the $300,000 Gotham Stakes, got the winner's share of $165 in that one and the 50 Kentucky Derby qualifying points. And finally, on our Triple Crown Tracker, let's go west to Santa Anita for the San Felipe Stakes. It was on the undercard of Santa Anita Handicap Day, but this was a headline performance, not an undercard performance for sure. It was the race we were expecting to see. If you follow my Countdown to the Crown series, the scouting report each Friday, I've had in the last several weeks and since the beginning of the year, Journalism has been my #1 ranked 3-year-old prospect. in many of the recent weeks, Barnes has been number 2 on that list. 1-2 the way I saw him coming into this race. And I thought from a value standpoint, Barnes would be over bet stretching out around 2 turns for the first time. And what journalism was giving up on seasoning, he hadn't run in 2.5 months. He did miss the Lewis Stakes because of a little sickness going through the barn in January. So he was a start behind. But I thought the difference in price is the reason why you leaned to journalism in here, even though I thought journalism definitely the better Triple Crown and Kentucky Derby prospect of the two going into it. But the gambler in me said you got to go for the value play. And journalism at 3-1, boy, did he prove to be good value.
Into the fourth turn, it's been all Barnes. He gets a little bit of a nudge and responds. Barnes starts to sprint for home. Stablemate Rodriguez trying to make it interesting in second, and journalism 4 off the pace in third. They're followed by Smooth Cruisin' and Mellencamp. They're a quarter of a mile from home, and Barnes is widening. Journalism now swings into action on the outside. These are the two as they come to the 8th pole. Barnes in front by 3. Journalism chasing with determination, getting closer with every stride. And here comes journalism right on by Barnes. And it will be journalism striding away powerfully to win the DK Horse San Felipe Stakes. Barnes had to settle for second. Rodriguez a distant third.
A big Saturday card at Santa Anita for journalism's trainer, Michael McCarthy. He won 3 stakes, 4 races in all, including the nightcap, the Get Out Special, just to put a bow on a 4-win day. So congrats to Michael McCarthy's team there with journalism, winner of the San Felipe. Big buyer speed figure in there, 108. So that's going to get a lot of attention from this point forward. You would expect him back in the Santa Anita Derby, according to McCarthy, and no reason for him to ship at this point. He's now won a 2-turn stakes twice over 2 different tracks. He won the 2-turn Low South Futurity and now winning the San Felipe. He will be the horse to beat, I believe, when we get to the Santa Anita Derby, where he could meet last year's champion 2-year-old Citizen Bull for Bob Baffert. I would expect him to stay home and attempt the Santa Anita Derby as well. As for the runner-up in here, Barnes, he really took nothing in defeat. I thought he ran well. He wasn't shortening stride. He galloped out pretty well. He just got ran by a horse who was really on his game and who just may be better than he is. We will see with Barnes. He cost $3 million plus. They're not going to stop going towards the Kentucky Derby just because he got beat once, and nor should they. He ran a good performance, and I really don't drop him when I look at the national pecking order. You could discuss Sovereignty's win in the race that we just saw, the Fountain of Youth. You could talk about Citizen Bull, the winner of the Lewis and last year's 2-year-old champion. You get into that mix, and I don't think Barnes is out of the conversation with any of those horses. So, yes, journalism ran by him, but if journalism doesn't fire, is Barnes the best 3-year-old in the country? That could be a good argument to make. So I still keep those two 1-2 in the fallout. I do not expect to see a rematch in the Santa Anita Derby, though. Baffert's got multiple horses for a lot of different clients, but a lot of them are crossover clients. He's not going to run them all in the Santa Anita Derby, obviously. He's a longtime supporter of the Arkansas series, so I expect somebody or 2 or 3 maybe to go to Oaklawn for the Arkansas Derby from the Baffert team. He sent horses occasionally to the Wood and the Bluegrass over the years. Those would make sense for some of these horses. I think Barnes hits the road. If you couldn't hold off journalism with that trip at a mile and a 16th, why would you run back against him at a mile and an 8th? The other thing, too, is he won the grade 2 San Vicente with Barnes. They'd like to get him a grade 1 win, right? And these horses have expiration dates. So if a horse is really talented, you want to get him a grade 1 win as soon as you can in terms of securing their breeding value. And so I would expect to see a grade 1 race on the road. That would cut out the Wood Memorial. A grade 1 race on the road next makes most sense to me for Barnes. That would either be the Arkansas Derby or the Bluegrass at Keeneland. Those would be the 2 options where I think we'll see him. Baffert's got plenty of horses. Rodriguez, 3rd place finisher there in the San Felipe. They'll have to figure out a spot for him as well as Cornucopian, who was the big 6-furlong winner on the Rebel Stakes Day undercard. Maybe he tries the Arkansas Derby. Maybe he tries Keeneland or the Wood Memorial. A lot of options for Baffert, but he's got Getaway Car, the horse who won the Sunland Park Derby. He has got a lot to separate between here and then. All right, coming up this weekend on the Triple Crown Trail, just one prep race worth points this weekend. The 50-point of the winter Tampa Bay Derby. Entries will close for this race on Wednesday this week. The race is Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs, over a mile and a 16th. Headliners expected when the field is drawn include Chancer McPatrick getting blinkers on for trainer Chad Brown, according to the Daily Racing Form. Patch Adams looking to bounce back off a disappointing defeat, but a decent effort at Fairgrounds for trainer Brad Cox. Cox will not run the Sam F. Davis winner John Hancock back here at Tampa Bay Downs, so he's going to run Patch Adams instead. John Hancock is in training and training well. I think he's headed to Keeneland. He makes sense as a bluegrass horse co-owned by Windstar Farm based there in Lexington. So I expect John Hancock to be a part of the Keeneland cast, but he will not enter, according to reports, for the Tampa Bay Derby this weekend. The horse he edged out in the Sam F. Davis, Owen Almighty, expected to go at Tampa. And we could also see Hill Road, third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, coming from Europe. He has since wintered with Chad Brown, and Brown could have both Chancer McPatrick and Hill Road in the Tampa Bay Derby. A lot to talk about that race come next week. Topic 3 on the big board this week, Thorpedo Anna begins her title defense this Saturday in the Azeri Stakes at Oak Lawn Park. The Azeri named for filly mare 2002, who won the Horse of the Year. Last year's Horse of the Year from the filly mare ranks, Thorpedo Anna. She's going to make her first start as a 4-year-old in a race aptly named after Azeri. Competition looks light on Saturday for her in the Azeri. She should roll at a short price if she's ready to go. Horses like Tarifa and Hoosier Philly from that part of the country are headed west for the Beholder Mile Grade 1 feature Saturday at Santa Anita. So the herd is thinned a bit against Thorpedo Anna, and quite frankly, why would you want to run against her in the Grade 3 company? This race, of course, the Azeri, a local prep towards the Grade 1 Apple Blossom this year, coming up on April 12th. What might the campaign look like for Thorpedo Anna as she comes back here as a 4-year-old? We talked about the Apple Blossom. She could run back in that on April 12th, or wait for the La Trionne on Kentucky Derby weekend at Churchill Downs. That makes a little bit more sense. Kenny McPeak likes to feature his horses in the big spotlights. I would be shocked if she's not part of the La Trionne cast coming up on Derby weekend. That also puts you in good timing to the Phipps Stakes at Saratoga on Belmont Stakes Day, June 6th. So that could be a spot for her. To Saratoga or Del Mar in the fall, of course, she'd say, why would you go to Del Mar? The Breeders' Cup's at Del Mar. So if you want to get a run over the track, you got the Clement Hurst tentatively scheduled for August the 2nd. The full schedule for Del Mar not out, but traditionally that race would fall on that weekend of August 2nd. And then at Saratoga, you could go for the Personal Ensign Stakes coming up on Travers weekend. Again, not a full schedule set for Saratoga at this point, but tentatively around the 23rd, 24th of August is what we'd expect to see from the Personal Ensign. From there, final prep for the Breeders' Cup could be lay off from one of those summer races or try the Spinster Stakes at Keeneland October 5th. And of course, this year, Breeders' Cup at Del Mar coming up on November the 1st.
As they come to the top of the stretch in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and Thorpedo Anna begins to move away. 1 furlong to go, she's in front by 2. Raging Sea still there, trying to fight for second, then Candide in third, but this brilliant filly's gonna take them all the way. Thorpedo Anna, what a year for her. She won it by 3 over Raging Sea.
Topic 4 this week, we're going to talk about litigating a lousy ride. We saw recently in the news last week that a lawsuit has been filed against jockey Luan Machado for his poor riding performance back on Thanksgiving Day aboard a horse named Hold My Bourbon. Hold My Bourbon had the lead in the stretch, as you'll see here, and was nipped on the wire. He ended up getting a 4-day suspension and a $1,000 fine for failure to ride his mount out to the wire. That was suspension enough and maybe penalty enough, but not so fast, said the connections of this runner. The folks who own Hold My Bourbon, Gravy Train Racing and Westbrook Farm, the breeder, that's Todd and Angela Lewis, they're suing Machado for negligence in the saddle. They had a $73,000 winner's share reduced to just $25,000 after losing by a neck. So they're not only suing for the difference in earnings and purse money, they're suing for some other damages as well in terms of potential breeding value and things like that. Now, do we have ourselves a lawsuit, or are we looking at something completely frivolous here? I think it's a frivolous suit based on this particular ride. If we saw the stretch run, this wasn't an egregious error. This is a guy who thought he had the race wrapped up and got nailed. Should not happen. An absolute suspension It sucks for the bettors, everything like that. I 100% agree. But to me, I don't think this is litigious. However, if you go back and when there was a lawsuit announced against Luan Machado, I just generally assumed it was the Keeneland race that we were talking about, where he misjudged the finish line back in October. Go back to this one, and this is where he thought the 16th pole finish line was in play when it was a run through all the way to the straight wire at Keeneland, the traditional finish line. To me, that might be something that you would look at litigious because it's not a physical error, right? The physical error or the mental error in judgment of, I think I've got the race wrapped up, like the Churchill situation that they're suing for, is akin to a lot of mental errors in sports. However, not knowing the correct finish line in a race, you might get into some negligence in that point of failure to properly prepare, because that wasn't a split-second decision. That was a lack of preparation in there. And if you could make an argument that you're hiring someone as an independent contractor for professional services, and they didn't do the necessary preparation to complete the job, maybe you've got a case in that case. But I don't think there's any case at all for the Churchill suspension. Different horse, a different group of owners. Nobody from the Keeneland case are filing a lawsuit against him. But honestly, when I saw Machado fined for pulling up too soon in a race, I assumed it was the Keeneland race where he completely failed to do his homework and didn't have the right finish line in mind. This is the situation, though. I don't think we're going to see a verdict in favor of the plaintiffs in this particular case. And if there were to be a situation where jockeys are held liable for the decisions they make in a race and the rides that they have, what kind of insurance situation are we looking at? I mean, jockeys right now and through the Jockeys Guild have almost an impossible task, and through the racetracks even, of trying to secure medical insurance for such a dangerous profession and so much risk involved. And you can understand as an insurer not wanting to, insure such a high risk position. Now, if you take that they're on the hook for $100,000 purses, $200,000 purses, how much would you have to insure yourself in a Breeders' Cup Classic or something like that against the potential purse losses of a client? It would completely destroy an industry. So I don't think that there's going to be a great precedent set in this particular case. But if it did come along somewhere along the line and it had to do more with that preparation and that blowing the finish line at Keeneland, then I might be open a little bit more to thinking, what could happen here if this is ruled in that respect. Luan Machado, though, going to face the court, apparently, or if they don't settle out of court because of Gravy Train Racing trying to establish new ground here in the owner-jockey relationships. Let's finish with our Stars of Tomorrow segment, topic 5 this week, and we're going to go back to Gulfstream Park on Fountain of Youth Day. There's always a horse on one of these undercards who runs through the win and everybody gets excited about. Todd Pletcher almost pulled it off in the big race in the Fountain of Youth when his runner there, River Thames, ran a good second. There were no questions, though, about the stretch run here for Disruptor. Second-time starter, drew off and won handily here. This is a $1.1 million son of Gunrunner. Won by 9 1/4 lengths at 3 to 5 odds. He was a debut third when well bet. This horse has not been a surprise to anybody to this point. Disruptor, graduating in the second career start. The Dam Margate Gardens is a full sister to Todd Pletcher's elite turf sprinter Bridgetown. So you wonder, will this horse get better around 2 turns? We had the same question with River Thames. Will Disruptor run well around 2 turns? Certainly a horse that we might be looking at as a top 1-turn prospector for Pletcher, maybe a horse for the Pat Day Mile. Keep an eye on this week's Star of Tomorrow, Disruptor. Let's wrap up this week's topics here on It's Official, the Goosebump Award. We started off with Locked, honored for that record-setting win margin in the Santa Anita Handicap. They've been running it since 1935. His 8.5 length drubbing, the biggest in the race's history. Triple Crown Tracker took you east to west to Sovereignty's win in the Fountain of Youth, Flood Zone in the Gotham, and we talked about journalism going head-to-head with the Bob Baffert trainee Barnes in the San Felipe Stakes. We looked ahead to the Tampa Bay Derby, which will draw Wednesday for Saturday. Thorpedo Anna looked at a potential campaign for her as she starts off her 2025 Horse of the Year title defense Saturday at Oaklawn in the Azeri Stakes. We talked about Luan Machado being faced with a lawsuit for his riding and what might happen in that case and what precedents could be set. if the courts were to rule in favor of the plaintiffs there in the Machado lawsuit. And we wrap things up with our stars of tomorrow. Disruptor, of course, who won on the undercard, the $1.1 million son of Gunrunner, winning at Gulfstream Park on Saturday on Fountain of Youth Day. That wraps up our 5 topics because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's the way we play the game. We hope to have Jeff back with us soon here on the program. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, I'll be back on Friday for our handicapping podcast, First Call, as we handicap the Tampa Bay Derby and many more races. Have a great day, everybody.